Good day, I'm Wayne Duvenage from OUTA, and this is our weekly wrap on Black Friday, at the end of November. Just speaking of Black Fridays, I mean, quite amusing to see municipalities now climbing onto the Black Friday bandwagon, with Tshwane offering a Black Friday discount or waivering of your interest rates if you pay your outstanding rates and taxes on time. I mean, how does it get to this mess? Well, just manage the cities properly, get your collection rates up, and we won't have to get into this Black Friday space. It's just crazy, isn't it? But come to think of Black Friday sales, we've been thinking long and hard. Maybe you can give us some ideas on how we introduce a Black Friday sale. It's like a bidding process on getting rid of corrupt politicians. Imagine if we can do that. But yeah, look, I mean, local government, this time next year, we'll have possibly completed the local elections. We're going to see some very interesting stuff. But let's get into the wrap of this week. And if you needed proof that Parliament can surprise you, well, this week delivered it, and in Burberry style. As you know, Matlala is a central figure in the dubious and questionable and unlawful infiltration, quite frankly, of corruption into our criminal justice system. And this week he tried to postpone his testimony, but the committee thankfully wasn't buying it. He was trying to sidestep the whole issue and the questioning, but it didn't work. And he was told to sit down and speak, Burberry outfit and all, Even Julius Malema said that he wore a suit so that he wouldn't be confused with prisoners. I mean, a bit of fun coming out of that. But getting back to the serious matter, with his track record, he should probably be wearing orange overalls by now. Whose am I referring to? Is it Julius? Is it Kat Matlala? Well, Kat Matlala is already using those, wearing those uniforms. I think the color of orange suits a lot of people, even if they might not think so. And we're going to see a lot more of that as we see a number of cases unfolding and starting to take shape. But at the Matlala hearing, once he started talking, the room tilted from this fashion show to a crime drama. And of significance was his claim that former police minister Bheki Cele received hundreds of thousands of rands in cash, in Woolies bags nogal. I think a lot of people are going to be careful, certainly politicians, are how they walk around with Woolies bags and going into Christmas. Is this the new brown envelope I see trending on the social media scene? 300,000 rand supposedly delivered to his luxury Pretoria penthouse, and another 200,000 at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And it was for what he says is to make the South African police services leave him alone. He says he was dragged into a police factional war, a Zulu war, he says, and that Brown Mokgotsi kept asking him for money. So you see what happens is once you get trapped into this and people know that you've got big tenders and a lot of money, well, you start being asked for more and more. I think he was starting to get very frustrated. And that he says he also met KZN Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to just talk about the 360 million rand SAPS tender, medical tender that he had. And by the way, this was one of those tenders that led to, was part of the assassination of whistleblower Babita Deokaran, who had flagged her concerns long before anybody had bothered to investigate. But through all of this, the cat insists that he never funded Senzo Mchunu's supposed presidential ambitions. According to him, Mokgotsi just used Mchunu's name like a membership card. Well, I think, we could see it. The MPs looked exhausted by the end of it. And you can blame them. Every answer seemed to just open up a fresh chapter of confusion. But the committee now has something, concrete names, money claims, meetings, and it's going to have to dig deep into all of these to start making sense of what's coming out of that ad hoc committee inquiry. But over at the Madlanga Commission, on similar matters, one got a sense that a more methodical approach was being taken by the Commission, akin to quietly and steadily sharpening the knives of accountability. that should flow from this process. For the Commission, this wasn't a week of wild theories. It was about operational failures inside the Hawks and the SAPS. Justice Madlanga pushed Hawks head Godfrey Labia quite hard on that. This now, specifically around the infamous fake alarm that was raised to arrest Katie Molefe. And this alarm triggered confusion, configured standoffs, and almost derailed this process entirely. And documents suggest that the alarm was false. The Commission wanted to know who issued it, under whose instructions, and why was it escalated nationally, and who's trying to interfere with this process. And this is important that we get down to the nitty-gritty in this Commission. Who was at play here? Who was usurping their authority? Who is protecting political interests here? The Commission also heard that the Hawks and SAPS units are just working at cross purposes, giving contradictory orders and stepping into each other's operations. This is factional stuff. This is where officers describe a system that just cannot decide who's in charge on the day of an arrest. And these are the symptoms, quite frankly, of a system that is broken because of political interference and poor leadership. A new witness has been called in to help untangle this Molefe timeline. And this is good because what Madlanga is doing is going in search of the facts, not vibes, not hearsay, facts. He wants to test and see what matters and what is accurate. And this is the formal things that flow from a judicial process, or that could flow into the judicial space, what we want from these commissions. This is the fact gathering that flows into charge sheets and possible arrests down the line. So it's important that the Commission does this thorough work. Moving over to Parliament and SCOPA and the Road Accident Fund inquiry, this also shows us the dynamics that are at play. Here you have we heard earlier, the Portfolio Committee wanting, or the Ad hoc Committee trying to be fobbed off by Cat Matlala, and they were having none of it. And at SCOPA, with Collins Letsoalo, who was the CEO at the Road Accident Fund, he just gave Parliament a complete fob off. He refused to appear before the committee to answer questions. Now, just some background here quickly. Collins Letsoalo was the CEO of the Road Accident Fund, or the RAF as it's known, from 2020 to 2025. And he was hailed as the ideal cleaner and fixer that could come and sort out the mess of this multi-billion rand state entity that is meant to serve the best interests and provide the compensation and treatment required of road accident injuries, or people who've suffered at the hands of road accident injuries and fatalities. Unless this is done properly, people suffer. People suffer immensely. And what he did in that time was nothing. He literally dug the hole deeper for the Road Accident Fund. He suspended and fired many employees and senior managers who just got in his way. He made many dubious appointments, contracts, protection programs for himself, and even tried to change the accounting system and principles to creatively hide the insolvency situation of this now broken institution. For many years, Collins Letsoalo went on his merry way, backed by his board, by the way, and this is frustrating. And they collectively just destroyed this organization. Many complaints, by the way, were raised with two previous ministers, Fikile Mbalula and Sindisiwe Chikunga. And what did they do? Nothing. And this is precisely why and how political interference works. When ministers appoint people to positions of power, and then they look away when the rot and the corruption and the plundering takes place. So we've got to ask questions of Fikile Mbalula and Sindisiwe Chikunga. Why did you do nothing? You know, Barbara Creasy really has her hands cut out trying to fix many of the broken institutions in the Department of Transport as a result of this political interference or non-action. So contrary to the Matlala saga, here we end up with Letsoalo, who just simply refused to appear at SCOPA. And his flat refusal is why SCOPA has now started this process of criminally charging him. Accountability isn't optional, and some like Letsoalo just think it is. He has to answer to the people, and that's the avenue through Parliament, who has the powers to take him on and subpoena him. So let's see how this unfolds. I really can't see it going well for him. In another event that we learnt of this week is the NPA succession race, which has been announced. We heard or learnt that there are 6 candidates that have been shortlisted to replace the outgoing National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi. And this, I don't have to tell you, I think is a very, very important and powerful position when it comes to accountability in South Africa. Remember Sheep, or what's his, Sean Abrams, we call him the Sheep, Sean the Sheep Abrams was known as, under Jacob Zuma's state capture years. When so much evidence was presented to the NPA about corruption that was unfolding at the time, and he too just simply looked away. He obfuscated and just ignored the facts, ultimately to protect Zuma's fiefdom from being prosecuted for their crimes. So it's important that we get somebody who's going to really lead this organization and take up the seat. But they will be inheriting an institution that is exhausted by political pressure, internal fractures, and years of stalled prosecutions. And we just cannot afford another compromised era of the NPA. We need somebody who is steady, who is fearless, and is willing to take on these cases that have just gathered dust for too long. As we know, orange overalls have not flowed to the extent that they should have in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. We need to reinstate a strong leadership and discipline and pride throughout the NPA. And so while we're on this topic, I think let's just talk about the strain on the justice system and how it appears to be playing out in other areas, and raising more concerns about possible capture of the judiciary. You may have recalled a year ago when Shamila Batohi did warn and say that the country's political system is being interfered with, or the political interference is actually taking place in the criminal justice system, and certainly on some of these prosecutorial decisions. Many brushed her off and her statements off as just institutional frustration. But recent times have shown that we believe her concerns were not theoretical. I mean, let's just unpack this a little bit. We currently have an inquiry into the fitness of Gauteng public prosecutor Andrew Chauke. We think there's valid reasons for that. This week we also heard of another judicial shock, or shock to the judicial system, when a High Court judge, Portia Patlane, was arrested in Gauteng for allegedly taking more than 2 million rand in bribes, cash and cars, and church leadership battle at play. Here we have a judge now who needs bodyguards because of threats now emanating from charges of her own. It's just been a tough week for the justice system. And for years, we've been taking comfort in the fact that our judiciary is untouched by corruption. Well, clearly that's not the case any longer. And that's a concern for us. And it also brings us to another matter which is raising its head lately, and that is the Constitutional Court sitting on a judgment for 12 months, one that pertains to Parliament's possible role of looking away when it needed to hold President Ramaphosa to account on the Phala Phala cash in the couch saga. Let me quickly recap on this rather important issue. In 2022, Parliament's Speaker commissioned an independent Section 89 panel chaired by retired Chief Justice Sandile Mqobo. That panel concluded that there was prima facie evidence that the President may have committed serious misconduct for failing to report the theft and concealing potentially a crime that violated anti-corruption laws. And he recommended, that committee and commission recommended that Parliament initiate an impeachment inquiry. When the panel when that report, that panel's report, was tabled in Parliament in December 2022, the impeachment inquiry motion was just voted down. The majority of the MPs rejected it. At that time, the ANC had the majority in Parliament, and that was the outcome. And so what happened after that was the EFF, joined by the ATM, decided to challenge Parliament's refusal in court. And they argued that the National Assembly's decision was unlawful and irrational, and the panel had already found that there was enough evidence warranting this inquiry. And so their goal was to have the National Assembly's decision set aside and force Parliament to reconvene and this time establish an impeachment inquiry, or at least refer the panel's findings to a proper parliamentary committee to deal with. Remember, again, this panel was chaired by Chief Justice Sandile Nkobo, which in itself lends institutional weight to the prima facie evidence finding. So the Constitutional Court heard this matter over a year ago. At that hearing in November 2024, the EFF and the ATM challenged, in their challenge against Parliament's decision, they were questioning whether this rejection of this panel's report was lawful or constitutional. And it attracted, I must say, fierce debate, with the EFF arguing that Parliament had failed in its constitutional duty of holding down the executive, or holding them to account, quite frankly. Ramaphosa's lawyers obviously countered that, saying that the panel's prima facie standard was insufficient and that Parliament's decision was within its discretion. Well, the concern here is this long delay. A year has passed. The Court reserved judgment after those arguments, which it deliberated on, and it hasn't delivered that judgment yet. And you've got to ask yourself, why? It's a year now, and this delay is now creating a lot of criticism, and it's triggering a lot of debate, and it's also triggering protest action, albeit politically driven, to demand that that judgment is released without delay. And it's this judgment, by the way, that could have serious implications for the president and the country, but quite frankly, as a whole. Could it be that this unresolved scandal is starting to bear down on Cyril Ramaphosa? I mean, recently we've heard a lot of talk, speculation, that President Ramaphosa is edging closer to an early exit of his presidency. I don't know whether that's true or not. The speculation is rife, but it also starts to be triggered from other questions that are coming to the fore, like this one around Phala Phala. And so a potential outcome of President Ramaphosa leaving office generates a lot of debate, additional debate just on its own. Like, what would happen if Ramaphosa is forced to willingly or not willingly step down from his post? I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of people who follow political dynamics in this country are frightened at the thought. Are frightened at the thought of our current deputy president, Paul Mashatile, of taking up the presidency in South Africa. I mean, let's be honest. This man is as presidential as a chocolate teapot in a heat wave. I mean, he struggles to manage press briefings. Be honest. Can you recall an event where Mashatile made a moving speech or was involved in a decision that elevated him in the eyes of the public? Very few, as far as I'm concerned, would readily trust him to run a bath, let alone an entire republic. Imagine it. It's horrific to even think about it. Personally, I think it's this idea that South Africa would inherit a Mashatile, or maybe one of the other possible factions within the ANC, somebody even like Mbalula. Can you imagine that? Leading this country. It really is a concern for many. But sadly, it doesn't make the situation that Ramaphosa is in right. It doesn't make the fact that not having these outcomes of these Concord findings right, to be held back right. We have, unfortunately, a president who is the best of a sad or bad bunch. and that's why we probably are concerned about him being removed, or many are. So if the court rules that Parliament had acted unlawfully, well, then what happens? Well, the MPs may be forced to revisit the impeachment process entirely. And if that happens, well, then we've got a potential situation unfolding that could see the end of the president, because we have a very different Parliament in place than was in place when that decision was taken by Parliament. But if the court rules the other way, or if the court just holds out on this ruling, it could cement a worrying precedent that political majorities can override constitutional oversight without consequences. That's the concern here. So right now, the silence on this matter is doing the damage. People are losing trust, not just in politicians, but now in our institutions that are meant to hold them accountable. So a lot has unfolded lately around our judiciary, as we've seen in these last few weeks. And this moment is bigger than what happened on the farm and the burglary and the scandal. It's much bigger than one president. It's a test of whether South Africa chooses institutional integrity or whether political fear and factional calculations get in the way to rewrite the rules. Let's move back to Parliament, because I can tell you that this week, or earlier last week, but it unfolded this week in Parliament, we wrote to Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, just expressing our complete disgust, quite frankly, and concerns about Minister Buti Manamela's conduct. You may recall in our recent conversations and communications that OUTA was really concerned about the minister's decision to reappoint SETAs, CEOs in those SETAs, and have their contracts renewed. Our research has shown, by the way, that the higher education space is a cesspool, I say it often, of corruption. A number of the SETAs and the National Students Finance Aid Scheme, NSFAS as it's known, has been captured by a network of people with nefarious intentions. And they are plundering the skills development levies like you cannot believe. These levies and these funds are meant for the upliftment, the development and the training of the youth for employment opportunities. And we've got a lot of evidence of the contrary, where this money is wasted, deliberately so, where it is channeled off for political intentions and political agendas. And it doesn't matter now how many times we write to the minister, he continues to fob us off. So we're encouraged to see how MPs have grilled the minister on why these developments are taking place. But, you know, we are concerned that he was pretty much let off the hook. The fact that OUTA's written submission gained a lot of traction in that portfolio committee says that our work is landing in the right places. It says that MPs are taking note, but there's definitely a political agenda even in those committees, and nothing's going to really happen as far as we're concerned. So we've got to make sure that we stay the course on this matter. We're going to push further and deeper into the cesspool of gross waste of taxpayers' money. This saga is by a long way not over, and we're going to be placing far more pressure on the minister and that department and the various CEOs and the boards in the various entities in higher education to start doing their work properly. So yeah, lots happening this week. There's a couple of other snippets that I just want to go through quickly. SANRAL publicly admitted a 1.6 billion rand tender was fraught with irregularities, and in so doing, we see that this is the stuff that we've been talking about. Altered specifications in tenders, weak and dubious scoring of tender bid evaluation committee processes, missing documents, all highlighted by SANRAL. The question we've got is, how did it happen under your watch? We've been saying for some time that here's an entity that is controls a lot of public funds in infrastructure upgrading, development, And these projects become compromised, they become delayed, jobs become affected, much needed construction stops taking place, and we've really just got to fix this mess. We're not surprised of hearing this, though, this week. Not at all, because we're on record as saying that SANRAL and their board specifically is overreaching. I mean, where is it? Where do you find that a non-executive board manages tenders above 750 million rand and appoints executives, not the executives themselves or the CEO, but the board, the non-executive board? We cannot have non-executives playing the role of an executive in a state entity like SANRAL. It is just absurd. So hopefully Barbara Creasy is going to start taking action here. It's long overdue. That board needs to be replaced sooner rather than later at SANRAL. I mean, again, we also heard at SANRAL just recently, the CEO places executive managers, 2 of them, under suspension, and the chairperson, another level, lifts those suspensions shortly afterwards. There's definitely some political shenanigans at play here, a lot of protectionism, and yet there's a lack of transparency. We do not get to know what's going on here. Nobody tells us. It's all just hidden in secrecy. Please, Minister Creasy, please conduct an independent inquiry, a meaningful one, into the goings-on at SANRAL. I think you're going to find a lot of maladministration, deliberately so, corruption, malfeasance, like billions being wasted there. In another area, SA Tourism, we hear, still owes the Tottenham Hotspur sponsorship millions of rands. I thought this had been resolved many months ago when the CEO of SA Tourism had tried to ram this down our throats. Well, at the time we heard that we were having nothing of it. Minister at the time had instructed it to be cancelled. Apparently not. Parliament heard this week that the SA Tourism still owes millions and millions of rands. Over 300 million has also been unaccounted for in this 5-year contract. So hopefully, as an SIU, a Special Investigations Unit probe, is now underway, we hear that that's the talk, over the entire agency, the SA Tourism. But it's just not a moment too soon. There's so much that's been going wrong there. And in another Tembisa hospital-linked arrest recently, we saw a SAPS sergeant and a Tembisa hospital official involved in hundreds of thousands of rands being arrested in a bribery sting. It connects once again to this whole corruption network that Babita Deokaran had warned us about. And so we see her courage continuing to expose the rot long after her death. Another headline this week, you might have seen, Transnet gets 600 million rand back from Nedbank following a settlement agreement they reached regarding a very long and ongoing tussle on this whole interest swap battle that was taking place. Very shortly, this was a matter that Regiment's Capital, which is a Gupta-linked institutional linked to the Gupta state capture sagas, they were involved in this process of ensuring that there was a massive amount of money that seemingly was going to be made by Nedbank in this interest rate swap. Brian Molefe at the time was the CEO of Transnet, and yes, we hear Nedbank defending their position and saying they only made about 46 million rand, I think that was the figure in the transaction. Well, then one has to ask, why are you settling on paying Transnet 600 million rand to resolve this issue? I think there's a lot more that's going to still unfold with this saga. So watch this space. So just to wrap up now with the rather successful hosting of the G20, now behind us, the city of Joburg management, I reckon they are breathing a sigh of relief. The spotlight is off them, off their degradation, but we cannot let that happen. We cannot let that happen. We have to keep the pressure on the city to make sure that they maintain these upgrades and that they go beyond the G20 routes and start to fix the entire broken city of Johannesburg. But with the G20 exiting came the postscript, which didn't take long at all, which was Donald Trump's announcement that South Africa is not invited to Miami to the next G20 in the States. I mean, really now, please, guys, let's just stop this diplomatic tit for tat tiff. It's just getting quite embarrassing. And then we also lose and have these withdrawals of funds and subsidies to South Africa with immediate effect, all based on irrationality and information that is just not factual. And so, you know, whether this is bluster or bargaining or just a political theatre around the summit, the consequences, sadly, of this is that it falls into the laps of people. It falls into more pain and suffering by the people of this country. These quarrels they are unruly, dismal, egotistical power plays. And it's got to stop. I don't know who's going to get these two people to sit down and just stop this nonsense. It's impacting on South Africa. We are a sovereign nation. We've got work to do. We've got to uplift millions of people out of poverty. We've got to be the anchor of Africa's agenda. And yet this type of squabble just holds us back and it cripples us further. So hopefully, you know, we don't have this diplomatic squabble continuing for much longer. We need steady, principled leadership now more than ever before. And I'll stop there. I just want to say, in wrapping up, it was a really eventful week this week. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our supporters and ask that if you haven't done so by watching this, please subscribe to our channel, like it and share it. And let's make sure that we all understand accountability matters now more than ever before in this country. And collectively we have power, but we have a bigger role to play if we're going to unlock this country's immense potential. So until next week, stay strong, have fun, and stay well, folks.